Welcome to episode 276 of In Touch with iOS, the show that talks about iPhone, iPad, Apple Watch, Apple TV, and related technologies. I'm your host, Dave Ginsburg, and my guest is back this week, Chuck Joyner. How you doing, Chuck?
I'm good, David. Thank you so much for having me back again. I was surprised you did after the last time.
Well, of course I'll be here. You're learning Jeff Gamet's rules. I'm surprised you're being here, but how you doing, Jeff? Glad you're here.
And much like Chuck, I'm surprised you let him back. I mean, I'm surprised that you let me on.
I love you, Jeff. Thank you.
Yeah, we all love you
too, Chuck.
Mm-hmm.
Last, certainly not least, Ben Roethig. Sir, how you doing, Ben?
Good. And of course, he invited me back. I make this look good.
Yeah, you're looking sharp there, buddy. So a fair amount of stuff to talk about this week. There was an Apple Pencil that was announced. I guess we might want to touch on that a little bit. Some good news stories. We're about ready to release iOS 17.1 and all kinds of other stuff. We're gonna hit some good topics today. But let's just jump right into the stories for this week. First story, I thought this was super interesting. Apple is planning on updating iPhones in store without opening the boxes. Apple has come up with a way to update an iPhone that's still in its packaging with a system allowing for iOS updates to be applied to the unopened smartphones while still in the Apple Store. One of the problems of buying that hardware, of course, consumers already are experiencing that they discover the devices need an update right away. We did that when we first got it, when the 15 came out. Those of us who got that had to deal with that. We've done it in the past, but apparently they're going to have some sort of pad-like device that the box can just go right onto this and wirelessly update to the latest version of the iOS. I'd like to know how this works. So we haven't seen anything else yet that describes it. What do you think, Ben?
It makes sense from a standpoint of having everything up to date.
Oh, 100%.
The one thing that has me slightly perplexed, doing an OS update takes a not insignificant amount of battery life.
True.
Unless doing it direct uses considerably less battery, unless the phones themselves are sold relatively quickly, you could find yourself with some older inventory that's pretty low on power when the customer gets it.
It must be, because I'd still like to know how this occurs. As technology minds want to inquire and want to know. What are your thoughts, Chuck?
Ben brings up a really good point. I was looking at it from another angle, and that is that Apple was able to remotely install system software updates. So, I'm sorry, but what kind of security issues does this pose if somebody else gets their hands on the technology, on the ability to do so? So I love the idea as a consumer. I love the idea that you'll be able to get a phone that is absolutely 100% up to date if you go to an Apple store. Since I usually have mine delivered because I don't live very close to an Apple store, I don't think it's going to affect me one way or the other unless they are installing these things in the UPS depots to do the updates remotely. I kind of doubt that. Mm-hmm. So, but I really would want to know more of the mechanics of it. Are they going through what we would consider a normal update process, or is there some secondary secret update process capability that they've built into the new versions of the OS or into the new hardware that would allow them to do it?
Yeah, just I'm perplexed. Maybe Jeff has an answer. I don't know.
I didn't even think about the security aspect.
Although I'm surprised this isn't already a thing, because if you're buying like for an enterprise,
right,
you can have provisioned devices that are still in the shrink wrap. So the ability to do installations with the sealed box, that's already a thing. So yeah, so I'm surprised that OS updates aren't a thing already. As far as security goes, I think that's a valid thing. My guess is that Apple will have a system that that downloads and holds the most recent updates and is authenticated through some security system that Apple has in place. And when you set the phone in the box on whatever the thing is, then maybe it has enough juice that even through the box, it can do some level of charging. But then because it's Apple's own proprietary system, if someone were to get a hold of the hardware, the likelihood they would be able to do installations, I'm guessing, would be pretty small or pretty low, because they wouldn't be able to do the other authentication parts with the hardware that are necessary to do an installation. As far as overall battery life goes, and that's a great question. Here's my hypothesis on that. It's not an issue. And the reason it's not an issue is because Apple's inventory in store turns over very quickly. And my guess is that this is something that will happen in stores. And if you buy from Apple direct and have it shipped to you, if it's coming from Apple's in-country supply versus being shipped directly from the manufacturing plants.
Yep. So I'd be curious to see if we get any other information about this. I bet Apple's keeping it pretty hush-hush.
They are, but we're going to see some sort of expose thing about how cool this is, and I'm looking forward to it.
Mark Gurman will get a hold of it. You know that. So
it's like you read my mind.
Yeah, very possible. Next story here is we've been talking about this a fair amount in the last couple months. Is the Goldman Sachs partnership with Apple is very, very, very soured right now. They are really trying to escape this deal. I just don't see it happening. Apple Card and Apple Savings are performing so poorly for Goldman Sachs. One executive has reportedly said that we should never have done this effing thing. So Goldman Sachs invested heavily in the consumer lending projects, most notably the Apple Card, but they also were involved with General Motors credit card, which I still think they have a contract on for that as well. And from the start, the company faced problems with accusations of bias in the credit limit calculations, and they've been clear of that. But it was also the fact that they're saying in the article here that they spent $350 for every new Apple Card user in 2022. Goldman Sachs lost $1.2 billion, chiefly because of the Apple Card, and they've had a deteriorating relationship. And they go on to say, they regret the deal, and it's no question Apple taking this over is not an option. They're going to have to find someone else to buy it, or they just kind of have to sit and wait till the contract runs out. And this has happened to other deals. I mean, Costco had an American Express deal, and then they moved over to Citibank and went to Visa. So, I mean, you see this happen all the time with these types of branded cards. So, what's your thoughts on this, Jeff?
My guess is that there's something happening.
Yeah.
But what's really going on, I don't think we know. We don't have any hard facts to go along with any of this. We just have a series of articles claiming unnamed insiders or saying certain things, and this has been going on basically almost since Apple Card started. So maybe there's something here. Well, there's something here, but the thing is, what is it really? Is this as bad as it's sounding based on the stories we're seeing, or is that a lot of conjecture that has just built upon itself? And are we looking at a situation where the investment Goldman Sachs had to make to get the card started, which is a totally normal thing when you do this, is the loss we're talking about, but that's not a long-term loss. And it's a totally normal industry thing. So I don't know. On one hand, I'm like, maybe the deal's not working out. But on the other hand, I'm thinking there's a serious likelihood that this is being blown into something bigger than it really is.
Yeah, very possible. Like you said, we see these stories all the time. What are your thoughts on this, Chuck?
Pardon me. I have something new to add to it
Okay.
that I heard Ken Ray talk about on Mac OS Ken. And Dave, I'm throwing a link in the show notes so you
Great,
can add
thank
it.
you.
But apparently there was, I guess, a quarterly earnings call or something with Goldman Sachs. And I want to quote, these are the quotes coming from the Apple Insider article I just gave you, which also Ken quoted on his show this morning. Our partnerships with Apple and GM are long-term contracts, and we don't have the unilateral right to exit those partnerships. So our focus at the moment is on managing them better, getting rid of the drag, and bringing them to profitability.
Okay, this is the first tangible thing that I've seen. Right. Okay, cool.
And this sounds like damage control. This sounds like somebody was talking too much, and as to Jeff's point, and unknown sources or sources familiar with the matter kind of thing. And so I wonder how much kickback they were getting internally. And again, this Apple Insider, characterizes it as dodging questions. I don't think they dodged the question. I think they kind of put to rest the fact that they can't just unilaterally terminate the contract. So, if they're going to try to focus on bringing it back to profitability, which, if they are successful in doing that, would make it a lot easier for them to sell the agreement to somebody else instead of saying, "Oh my God, we're losing all this money. Won't you please take this off our hands?" So, I'm hoping we can end up hearing more about this. But this was very, very interesting.
This sure sounds to me like what you would say if you need to do the damage control, like you're just saying, Chuck. And you want to make sure you say the right things. So you hand over the message to your legal team and they say, you can say it this way. And we won't run afoul of any federal regulations. We won't cause problems with the contracts we have in place with Apple or GM. And we're making a solid statement that's still vague enough that we're not confirming or denying anything, because that's not something we can do. And it wouldn't surprise me, with all these rumors that have been going around, if at some point Apple's legal team, or maybe even Tim Cook, called up Goldman Sachs and was like, yo, what the frack? And Goldman Sachs is having to do their damage control to smooth over these rumors that may or may not have any factual basis.
Right. If you think about it, it really doesn't make a lot of sense for them to be complaining about how much money Apple was allegedly was costing them, or how much profit they weren't making on it, if they really were trying to shop it around and unload it.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you step back a minute, and we all got kind of caught up in this, but if you step back and look at it, it's like that. Just why would you do that? Why would you
sow that doubt in the minds of your investors as well?
Or
that's just bad business.
Yeah, or in the minds of potential buyers.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, very, very strange.
Yep. I think this kind of all goes back to one thing. Goldman Sachs is a B2B lender. They are very new to consumer lending, which may or may not have led them to signing a bad deal that, to their own admission, they can now not get out of. Yeah, I think what they said on that investor call is pretty as close to being clear as a publicly traded company can be. It's not where they want the business right now, but until the terms of that contract are complete, they are stuck.
Yep.
And the only thing, if we're back to having the discussion about if Goldman really did do a bad deal, whatever that means, then that's on them.
Yeah.
And so maybe they were trying to play in a space they were, because I think Webb Bixby indicated to us on Tuesday that he had seen something that their CEO wanted to get into the consumer lending market. And, maybe he thought, hey, this is the way to do it. We'll go with Apple, top shelf customers, all the things positive things we can characterize about Apple customers. And they found out that they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
They, meaning Goldman Sachs, not the Apple customers.
Yeah, they don't know what they're doing. And Apple knows exactly what it wants to do.
Yeah.
It's true. Well, it's going to be interesting how this plays out. But for now, they got to stick with it. Next story here. The FCC in the United States today opened the 6 gigahertz Wi-Fi spectrum to low power devices such as AR and VR wearables. This means that devices like the Apple Vision Pro headset will be able to operate in that 6 gigahertz band, though it's unclear if the initial version of the Vision Pro will even be able to take advantage of this functionality. Apple, Google, Meta, Microsoft, Intel, Qualcomm all have teamed up back in 2019 to ask the FCC to allow this the VLP, or very low powered, for these devices. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see where this spectrum goes, and FCC continues to open up all these spectrums to different technologies. What do you think, Ben?
This could be very good for the Vision Pro. CarPlay is...
Yeah, even CarPlay, I forgot to mention that, yeah.
Yeah, CarPlay is noted here. And there's really been some, problems with connecting to CarPlay over the years. Yep. This could definitely help that. It's just another spectrum, another tool in the arsenal of device makers.
Yep. How about you, Chuck?
I think it's great to see the unused spectrum is being opened up. I think we have to wait and see just what the performance aspects are of it and what the manufacturers and vendors can do with it. Other than that, it's great that there's another, and at least in theory, better option for it.
Right. And you, Jeff?
I'm all about finding ways to have reliable wireless connections with better power management. And it looks like that's part of the promise of this. Now, it's also possible that Apple is building the 6 gigahertz support into Vision Pro, but not having that tested for licensed use yet. So it can be there as something that they can enable later on, which wouldn't surprise me at all if Apple was anticipating this new part of the spectrum being opened up and designed Vision Pro with that in mind. As far as this being a great thing for CarPlay, that sounds great. But man, don't hold your breath, because the car industry moves so slow, and actually having this in your car, or even in aftermarket CarPlay heads, it's going to be a while before you see that show up.
Yep, that's for sure.
Yep. I have just one thing to add here. It seems kind of like the 6 gigahertz is that happy medium between Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. I wonder if this could be something that could enable lossless wireless audio.
True lossless wireless audio. Oh, I like this idea, Ben.
Possibly. Could happen.
Interesting idea, Ben.
Yeah, good analogy on that. Last story this week, Netflix is going to raise their prices in the U.S. yet again. The premium plan is now going to cost $23 a month. They announced this yesterday as we record this, that they're increasing the cost of some of its subscription plans in the U.S., UK, and France. Prices will go up for the basic and premium plans in those 3 countries. In the United States, the prices for the basic plan will increase from $9.99 to $11.99, while the price for the premium plan will go from $19.99 to $22.99. The ad-supported tier will remain the same at $6.99 per month, as well as the $15.49 monthly standard plan. Netflix doesn't offer this basic plan to new subscribers in the United States, but presumably they'll increase it for existing customers. The premium plan was, well, of course, the plan that had the 4K video streaming versus the standard plan, which had just 1080p. And Netflix announced this during their earnings call, and they said they added about 8.8 million new subscribers, and they're saying that was in a direct reason because of the password crackdown issue. But I'm telling you that the streaming wars are just keep going, and this is just continues on with pricing and changes. It just changes daily. What do you think, Jeff?
Netflix finally hit that threshold where I have to seriously consider whether or not I continue having a subscription.
Yeah.
Yeah. Part of it is because we know that they've gotten a lot of their login sharing under control.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. This one is feeling to me more like a money grab, just a way to boost their revenue, as opposed to a necessary move to maintain the services that they're offering.
Yeah, especially.
And
sorry.
Oh no, and just to clarify, yes, a lot of my hypothesis here is emotional, because I don't know what it actually costs to run Netflix.
Right. I was just going to add before you ask the other panelists, especially the fact that the actor strike has been ongoing, and Netflix is keeping money in the bank because they're not having to pay for any of these new series because they're all on hold. If there's any new ones that are potentially coming in the future, and the actors can't do anything. So I'm wondering that had a little bit to do with it. Maybe pad their bank account before that they start getting all this new content again. What do you think, Ben?
I think Netflix got a little too much steam in their head following the gains in password sharing crackdown.
Yep.
I think this price increase not only is going to stunt that growth, I think it's going to reverse it pretty considerably. Next, as far as new series, they're not able to commission their own under SAG-AFTRA. However, they are able to buy content, and they're able to make foreign content, which Netflix, since they're having a bit of a drought in high quality US series, has been relying on increasingly. Last thing, honestly, since their heyday 8 to 10 years ago, there's not a whole lot on Netflix I really want to watch right now. If T-Mobile did not give it to me free, I don't know if I would have a subscription. In fact, since they never got around to integrating with the Apple TV app, I barely watch Netflix at all.
Yeah. How about you, Chuck?
So let's do a scoreboard here. So they've cut down on password sharing, which is absolutely within their right and is probably a correct thing to do. But that and so some of these serious addicts have decided to go back and resubscribe. So that's the first thing. They kind of took away some of the flexibility. They have a reputation for canceling shows that they've developed and earned the ire of the fans of those shows. They stopped DVDs by mail. So they have alienated a certain faction, admittedly probably a small faction, but not everybody has high-speed internet. And there were still people relying on that particular service. They now raise prices. This seems like they're doing everything they possibly could to be a company. Oh, and let's not forget the economy that we're in, theoretically in a recession, headed for a recession. Somewhere the recession word has to come up. this seems like a company that's doing everything it can to alienate as many people as possible. Congratulations. Good job, guys. You know, what, you start to, the only thing I will say, Ben brought up something I'd forgotten about, that they can buy content. And so is this a way to get a little bit more money so that they can go out and do that, as opposed to trying to develop it during the strike times? Okay, maybe, but it seems like a funny way to do it, given that also, as Ben said, they're not having to spend that money to develop the new shows, that it's still sitting there earning interest. And by the way, if they're investing smartly, a pretty decent return on the interest right now. So I just don't feel like this was the time or under the circumstances which you should do a price increase.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. It's interesting time to decide this. So see where the numbers go, I guess, right? You got one more thought, Ben?
Yeah. To be perfectly honest, the last 10 years since the heyday of Orange is the New Black and that type of shows, have we seen Netflix make all of that many smart decisions?
Well, Stranger Things, another one.
Oh yeah, that one.
Did they? I mean, that was a positive decision. They didn't kill that yet, did they?
No. Oh, Orange is the New Black, I
so.
think it ended, but Stranger Things.
Yeah, but Stranger Things didn't.
Stranger Things has the second half of the last season.
Yep.
Still to come, and that, I believe, wraps up the whole Stranger Things story.
Yeah, what, 5 seasons, right? There was. Oh, so it shall be interesting. That's for sure. Let's move on to the topics this week. Beta iOS 17.1 release candidate was sent out to developers and the public beta testers. And it's looking like as leaked dates come out, October 24th, which would be less than a week from the time we're recording this, is going to be released. We've talked about a number of things it already has as far as its updates, including the AirDrop over the internet, standby. It allows you to control how your display turns off on the 14 Pro and the 15 Pro. Music with the different changes for favorites, and be a lot of bug fixes. Notably, there were some bugs with the iPhone 15 with screen burn-in. I hear conflicting stories where it's going to fix it and maybe not fix it, but you would hope it does. And as well as there was some screen syncing across all Apple devices with screen time. Not that too many of us use that. So it looks like 17.1 will be out for both iPad and iPhone less than a week from now. You also have Watch OS 10.1 is out, as well as tvOS 17.1. And I don't. Unless you got anything, Ben, as far as anything notable that's been in beta.
Only the God, I forget what the mode's called. But bringing forward the voices in Apple TV when used with the HomePod Mini in the first jet.
Oh, the voice enhancement thing.
Yes.
Oh yeah. Dialogue. The voice was a dialogue, I think it was.
Yeah, enhanced dialogue.
Enhanced dialogue.
There we go.
Anything you seen on your iPad, Jeff?
No, which is actually good.
Yeah, so I think it's ready.
Yeah, I mean, if it's working, and I'm not seeing things where I'm like, oh wow, that's a big change. Unless it's like, this is a feature that wasn't available and now it's actually there. To me, that's a good sign for updates.
Yep.
Yeah. Plus, we haven't seen an RC2.
Yeah. Which, by this time you probably would have, but there was some issues, so it's probably looking promising. And then along with that, those who are still on iOS 16 devices that can't go any further, as well as haven't upgraded yet, Apple still continues to release updates to that. Those are release candidate on 16.7.2 that covers both iPad and iOS, and I'm sure most of it is going to be just bug fixes, and any security issues were corrected in that. So, but Apple continues to support the older older OSs to keep going on that. So it's good to see that when it comes to doing those things here. So, don't think we have anything else we could talk about here in beta. Let's go ahead and move on for the topic of this week. Topics. Apple announced a new pencil. Woo! That's what we're going to celebrate, right? I don't know. After we talk about this, so it is a new USB-C pencil, and it's a much lower price point. It's $79, much more affordable. But it is a cheaper model. It doesn't have the pressure sensitivity, which I think is a big game changer when it comes to that. We have a link in the show notes that shows the comparison to what the three different Apple Pencils do these days. And that's the biggest thing of the three. The new USB-C version does not have pressure sensitivity, does not have double tap support. You can't even get engraving on it, for crying out loud. Mm-hmm. It does support the iPad 10th gen, the Air 4th and 5th gen, as well as the iPad Mini 6th gen. So most of the more current models, this pencil covers it. But I don't think this is going to be a market for everybody. It might be a market for somebody as an executive, let's say. They just want a pencil that they can write with, and that they're on a plane or they're in a meeting. They want to be able to just have it. They're taking notes, but not from what the comparison is, what the Apple Pencil 2 does. I'm going to start with Jeff, since, Jeff, you're the artist in this group here. What do you think here? I think this is not a pencil for you, for sure. But
this is not the pencil for me, and that's okay.
Right.
All right. So, mini rant. Apple, what is wrong with your naming?
Yeah,
they have the Apple Pencil, the Apple Pencil, and the Apple Pencil.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what the product names are. That is ridiculous. So, okay, here, I'm glad that they've come out with this new product called Apple Pencil. It is not a new generation of the device, but it fits, I think, an important place in Apple's market, because you do have, like you said, business people, executives that want an Apple Pencil, but pressure sensitivity isn't a feature that they need. I can see where this has the potential to be a much more enticing stylus for the iPad for schools, because it doesn't have a cap you lose, and it comes in at a much more affordable price point than the wireless charging Apple Pencil. So yeah, I can see where this is going to fit into Apple's product lineup nicely. Brian Chaffin and I had a discussion about this on Context Machine this week, and what it came down to for Brian was, if you can afford an Apple Pencil 2, the magnetic charging one, mm-hmm. then get it, because you have all the features.
Right.
And my feeling was, sure, but if you really know you don't need all the features, why should you spend $50 for features you aren't ever going to use?
Mm-hmm. It's true. Ben, I know you've had some thoughts about this pencil debacle. What is this one worth even going into? What do you think?
Well, first, Apple marketing team, you should have called it either the Apple Pencil SE or the Apple Pen to differentiate, because this is in a whole different class of stylus than the Pencil 1 or the Pencil 2. Well, who's this for? Well, a little company you might have heard of, called Logitech, came out with a little device years back called the Crayon. Apparently, that Crayon did well enough that Apple decided to get its own chunk out of that market. The other thing, and I hope I am not stepping too far into future show notes, not only is it competing against the Crayon, it's competing against these things on Amazon.
Yeah.
That literally, this is almost what that USB-C pencil is. It will natively write using the Apple Pencil protocol. It will charge via USB-C, but it won't do any of the higher end functions.
Yeah, I like to know what you've got that pencil. I've got links in the show notes to 3 of the pencils we wanted to talk about that they're just knockoffs basically, but they're extremely cheap, anywhere between $20 to $30. So it's you have to wonder how is the using of that pencil. I'm curious to know too. I may even buy one just to take one for the team just to try it.
Before the tip broke on this.
Mm-hmm.
And let me be clear, this is where this is where you can buy this thing for $15 comes from. That part, neither the tip nor the tip reloading mechanism are all that well made. But when it did work, it worked reasonably well. I needed it to write notes. I needed it to draw circles, and it did that very well.
Yep.
And the tips, that's a good thing for
not yet.
Oh, wait, not that. No. The tips for Apple Pencil and Apple Pencil are all the same. Yeah. So if you bought the original Lightning connector Apple Pencil and you have tips for that, they work on the wireless charging and on the USB-C charging Apple Pencils, which is kind of cool.
And they can also use every single third-party tip ever designed for the Apple Pencil.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think that's where Apple getting a $10 premium over the crayon, or a considerably more than $10 premium off of some of the knockoffs, they can say they have 100% first-party capability and compatibility, and they can use all the tips.
Just to add a little bit to that, because Brian and I did just finish recording, and he's mostly pedantic, so it rubs off on me. I would consider Logitech's Crayon in that same category with the Apple branded styluses, because it was co-developed with Apple. So I would call that a full compatibility stylus, except that it does not use the same tips.
Yeah.
We get Chuck in here.
Full hardware and software.
Yep. I want to get Chuck in here. What have been your thoughts with this whole thing with the pencil? And I know you're not a big Apple Pencil user, but
no, actually, in fact, I was just looking up. I was curious because I do not know. Okay, so Logitech Crayon is right now showing
$69.95.
$69.99 at Best Buy. So gives you just
so it's $10 cheaper than the USB-C Apple Pencil.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Correct?
Right.
Okay.
Right. And I don't know if you can see it, but it's always fun trying to do this. Right there is one of the Apple Pencil knockoffs that Dave has in the show notes that I pulled out and made sure it was charged and was using it today because of this discussion. And we're right back to it. It depends on what your use case is. For me, I'm not going to draw anything. I'm going to make some notes, maybe in Notes or in an application that will accept my chicken scratch graphically, because it's never going to recognize what you would call my handwriting. And so, I think it all comes down to what the use case is. I just think that you need to really consider what it is. Jeff knows obviously what he's going to do with his. I would tell you to buy upmarket anytime, because it seems like what you do now, you're almost certainly always going to want to do more. If you have any artistic capabilities in your hands, then go for it. Otherwise, I just don't get it. And I should point, I want to take a page from Ben. I'm going to try to help the Apple marketing department too, and say take a page out of Star Trek's book and say Apple Pencil A, B, C, or no bloody A, bloody B, or bloody C. I don't know. But,
they want the latter.
Chuck going full on relics on us. Nicely done.
Yeah, but something like this, it just, I think we're all going to start to refer to this as the Apple Pencil USB-C. if they'd have named it that, at least that would have made a certain amount of sense. But just to call it an Apple Pencil, yeah, I'm sorry. I know you're trying to keep the whole identity thing going, but this is a little shaky.
Yeah. Well, I get folks here from the chat room here. That's at youtube.com/intouchableios. Brett in the chat said it would have made more sense if they were to name the Pencil and the Pencil Pro. I think that's probably a good way to really name it. It shouldn't distinguish it. It's some surprising. It's just lately Apple's has not been very good at naming. I mean, just like we talked about the AirPods Pro 2, they just updated it with the USB-C connection, but real no subtle change in naming because they are going to irritate people who already own the one with the Lightning connector. So this just seems lately that the marketing has not been good with Apple when it comes to these products.
No, and the suggestion of Apple Pencil Pro and Apple Pencil, I love that. However, Apple marketed themselves into a corner with Apple Pencil because when they came out with this one, the one that charges magnetically, they didn't call it Apple Pencil Pro. That was the time where they should have introduced the Pro moniker, because you can't just rename this one to Apple Pencil Pro. You have to come out with a new model that has more features, and that one can be Apple Pencil Pro. I don't even think they'll do that. It'll just be Apple Pencil, and then in parentheses, 3rd generation, which then will confuse people because they're like, well, wait, I thought the one with USB-C was the 3rd generation, but it's not. Anyhow, I'll stop now because I'll just start ranting if I keep going.
Yeah. Well, like I said, it's all going to be preference, and I guess Apple's good for them for actually throwing out their lower end model, and people who don't want to spend money on it, they can jump on it. Any more last thoughts on the Pencil before we move on?
Only that, since I looked at the crayon price, it feels like, I don't know, maybe this is another one of those situations where they try to introduce something in the hopes that you will look at it, you kind of fall in love with the idea, and then buy the next model up. Sort of like we've had the discussion about the way they do with RAM configurations and hard drive configurations on laptops, that, for just a few dollars more, you can get this one and it does all these other things. And so if that's a strategy here, it just feels like this is not that strategy because of the USB-C connection. That feels like a genuine improvement that is in keeping with the way they've been moving to take everything to USB-C. Yeah. So I struggle with the price point. Yes, it does have the Apple brand, and as good as Logitech products are, they don't have the Apple name on them.
Mm-hmm. Chuck, you just inspired a hypothesis from me.
I'm so glad I could inspire you, Jeff.
And here Dave thought he was going to be able to move on from this topic.
I want to keep this topic going because this is interesting information.
All right. So here's my hypothesis. And it's a 2-part hypothesis now. Apple has a long-standing track record or strategy of trickling down, meaning you start at the high end, and when you feel like, based on whatever their terms are, they have saturated that market point, then they bring out the version that costs less. And the iPod is the perfect example of how they've done or did that, because they started with the iPod and then they introduced the iPod Mini and Nano and Shuffle, and they just kept working their way down through price points as they hit whatever their goal was. So maybe they've done that with Apple Pencil, and now we get this less expensive model. The other thing it does is roll us right into EU charging compliance.
Good point.
Yeah. One more note in the chat. Wayne said that he uses his Apple Pencil 2 for taking notes and journaling and Notability on his iPad Pro M1. That's a perfect. That's a perfect example of using it for the pencil. For that, it's just basic notes, but having the pressure sensitivity is an added plus with that pencil. And yes, Ben, we are going to be doing the pencil shuffle.
Yes, just randomly
shuffle.
It just randomly writes words.
Yeah,
right. But it also has a limited vocabulary.
That's right.
Maybe you can bring what was the Chicago Bears quarterback McMahon?
Jimmy
bring
Graham,
him out to
the
redo the
punky
Super Bowl.
QB.
Yeah, to redo the Super Bowl shuffle as the
Apple Pencil shuffle.
Yes.
That's probably really funny for people that are into the sports thing. So I'm going to go with that was super clever.
Oh, for me and Dave, that's hilarious.
Yeah. I was playing to the audience a little bit, Jeff, knowing these two are Chicago people.
Yes, definitely
Bear
interesting.
down.
All right, let's move on to another topic here. This was interesting. This was an interesting couple articles I found here about Apple's Thunderbolt 4 cable. They called the Mac. They did the X-rays and they showed the complexity of their cable. And I found this to be very interesting. You wonder why these cables cost far more than their standard USB-C cables because of the what they do. But you look at the series of X-rays they show here on this article. There's an Amazon Basics cable versus some of their lower end USB-C cables. But then you look at the Apple's cable and all the complexity and in here that's as far as what it does and uncovering the hidden engineering differences here. Because you have, Apple charges almost 100, raising a few eyebrows. That's $159 cable, which is a little crazy if you ask me. And they have the 2-meter version, which is at $69. So you have that the little longer, little shorter ones. Whereas you get the basic USB-C to USB-C 2.0 Amazon basic cable is $12. So, so you do a little bit of a comparison, and they were showing some of the different ways that the wiring is set and how data transfers through it, and you see some complexity here, potentially with the way data transfers through, and some of them they had some close-up shots of it, but I think the moral of it all is that you get what you pay for. I don't know if I'd necessarily spend an absorbent amount of money. I think even the OWC cables that a lot of us buy, probably they didn't even compare those. Look like this is something that is works perfectly fine. But I want to hear your thoughts, Ben. What do you think on this? Is it important to have a cable like Apple's versus some of these others, depending on what you do?
Depending on what you do, just remember, USB-C is not a technology.
Right.
It's a connector that enables several different technologies. For instance, on a Thunderbolt cable, you have through that single cable, excuse me, you have Thunderbolt 3 or 4. You have USB up to 4.0.
Right.
You have DisplayPort, and you have HDMI. Not every single cable is going to be able to do all those. Obviously, right. the Apple one is going to be the most complex because it is a full spec Thunderbolt cable. Whereas the last one there probably only does charging, so it only needs a couple wires.
Right. And I've seen many times, like I have a headband I wear every night to go to sleep, and it's got the the built-in Bluetooth headsets, but you pull the wire out to charge it. If you can't use those cables to charge that device because they're too high powered cables that it'll even work. You have to have the low end USB-C cable that's going to do it, and that's pretty typical of many other devices that are like that. So it's buyer beware when it comes to using those types of cables like that. I mean, even the cable that comes with some of the older Macs before the MagSafe, you had that Thunderbolt USB-C cable to power and then charge your Mac. Same thing. It really is the differences of what you need and what you need for it to do. Just like we talked about earlier with the cable that you can get for the iPhone 15 and the 15 Pro, you get the 40 gigabit 240 watt 240 USB-C cable that's going to do much faster data transfer than even if a standard USB-C cable won't do. So, Jeff, what do you think on this? Your thoughts on all this with these cables? It seems kind of confusing to a lot of people, I think.
It's horribly confusing. And Ben, I'm so glad that you brought up the difference between the connector and the protocols, because that's so important. I'm really glad this X-ray comparison thing was done, so that people can see that there's a difference between what's in a $129 cable versus a $5 cable. They're not the same. And what I would love to see now is the same thing done, where it's all Thunderbolt cables from multiple companies being compared in the same way. Just the X-ray alone shows that you are not working with the same technology here. It's very obvious that what's going on in the Apple cable is way beyond what you're getting in any of these other USB-C cables that are carrying USB protocols over them.
Yeah, that's a full-on motherboard.
Yeah, there's a chip. Yeah. There's a little board in there compared to the other ones. Where the other ones are just soldered wires onto the plug.
Yeah, but that's basically it. And people being able to see this, it's great, because you do hear people saying things like, "Why would I spend $130 on that kind of a cable when I can order an Amazon Basics for $5?"
Well, it's not going to do what you want,
right? It's not the right cable for a lot of uses. For what you get in a cable like this, you are paying for what you get.
Yep. How about you, Chuck? What do you think?
I think Jeff just said it. You're going to pay for what you get. You brought up the OWC cables. Those are great cables. I'd love to see something done head to head, so that, because that is probably some of those in the high-end anchors are some of the best cables that I've used. So I'd love to see that. What I really want to know is who decided to put a cable inside a CT machine. I think that was a really interesting approach to it.
But mad genius.
Yeah. But if you haven't gone to the article, folks, go to it, because it really is interesting, and it gives you a really good idea of just the kind of incredible precision that we're seeing. And this is in a cable. This is not in a motherboard or an iPhone board. This is a cable. So think if they could do a CT scan of a motherboard.
Chip.
And we're reading in the news about 3 nanometers, and I guess they're talking about starting to do 1 nanometers. It kind of boggles the mind a bit.
Yeah, it does. I also linked in the show notes Luma Field, which is a manufacturer. That's where their source was from the other articles. That gives even more detail that the other articles didn't provide, including some other options besides the 4 we just talked about, to see. Really, like here, they even compared a $5.59 nice TQ USB-C cable. You look how very basic it is. There's just 4 wires connected to this, soldered onto into the plug, and that's it. So you really get a nice, great view in comparison of what these cables do. I never thought I'd be talking about cables here, but cables are important. Even with your iOS devices, with your iPhone now, with the on the 15 with the USB-C, be interesting to see how the Lightning connector is. Someone did a comparison of that. Which of course that's going to be going away sooner or later, but and like Ben said, in touch with cables.
Yeah. Well, and it's possible to over-engineer things. There's no question about that. And so what you have to start to ask yourself is, what's hiding inside that Apple cable that it can do that maybe we don't know about yet?
Well, I mean, I think it's pretty much fully in spec with the Thunderbolt spec. It's just you have what was just a couple of years ago an entire computer's worth of I/O in a single cable.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, for some people that's confusing. For some other people, that's a fresh breath air because that single port offers a lot of flexibility.
definitely. All right, last topic I wanted to hit here is about iCloud. I found this was an interesting article. Dan Morin was well known in the Mac world on Macworld. He wrote this on Apple has a iCloud problem. The basic free-to-all features are desperately in need for some tender administrations. It's been a long time where we've been putting up with the basic iCloud space, which is only 5 gigabytes, and you'll fill that up in about 1 minute when it comes to all your photos and anything else. But I think they have done some improvements. I have to say, and I agree. I agree with him in his saying that they'd have some improvements, and it does have a little bit compelling reasons to use it over like a Dropbox or such of that. But really, it's dependent on your usage when it comes to iCloud. I think the bottom line is when it comes to iCloud is the fact that it's there automatically. Most consumers don't want to deal with it, and the nice thing of the fact is it's there to back it up. But you got to get these people to understand you do have to pay a little bit to have enough space to store your photos. Even if you get the simple 50 gigabyte plan, the smaller plan, it isn't a bad idea. He also talks about a little bit as mail. It's a bit of a mixed bag. Reliability issues with iCloud Mail. It's going back to the old iTools era, if you remember that. A lot of issues when it comes to mail as well. So I think Apple has a little bit to do, and I don't understand why they won't take the time to start, doing this updates. And there are a lot of things I agree with Dan on this as far as what we should do with iCloud. It should they be making some improvements? They're long overdue. What do you? I want like your thoughts on this, Chuck. Where do you think iCloud is, and do you find it that it needs some drastic updates? I think it does.
I would like to see some things. I'd love to see what we perceive we're seeing in the current Mac OS and the current iOS, right, as a polishing off, addressing some of the bugs and issues and problems. I can argue with people all day long about, what you should be entitled to and the usefulness, because it feels like, if everybody else charges you for storage space, for photos or for anything, what Apple gives you is arguably adequate to back up your system. And that's about it. If you want to start storing photos, you need to buy more. And that doesn't feel inconsistent with what the market offers.
Right.
So, I feel like my use of iCloud, I don't use Apple Mail that much, either the service or the app. So I'm probably not the one to really comment too much on that. I do seem to hear a number of, issues around that. That seems to be a low level constant. And that seems like that should be arguably something that, of all people, Apple could clean up.
Right.
The rest of it, I think we need a vision for iCloud. And right now, Apple seems to have executed on the vision that they had. They just haven't revised the vision for a while. Meanwhile, a lot of people are out there second guessing it based on what other services are doing. Funny thing about those other services, though, they're charging. They charge more.
Right.
So.
Jeff, you use Apple Mail all the time, but I think he's talking a lot about iCloud Mail, using iCloud.com or Mac.com, that service. But there's challenges with Apple Mail for sure. There always has been.
There are challenges with Apple Mail, but since we're talking about Apple's cloud services, I won't go into that. As far as iCloud Mail goes, it's not my primary email.
Right.
So if I've had trouble with it, I haven't been aware of it because it's been resolved before I noticed. Right. As far as what Apple gives us for free, just because we have our I almost said iTools account and then started to correct myself to our .Mac accounts. I guess that tells you how long I've been doing this. But we're at a place right now where Apple expects us to be using cloud services for our data management and backups.
Right.
And I'm okay with that. The problem that I have is that we get the 5 gig storage for free with our accounts. If Apple wants me to back up, tell me which of my devices that's sufficient storage for a proper backup.
Yep.
My feeling is if people want to sign up for an iCloud account and then Apple gives them 5 gig of storage for free, that's fine. But as soon as you buy an iPhone, they should include enough storage to be able to back up your iPhone. That should just be part of the package. And so as long as you have your iPhone, then you have that extra storage that goes along with it because you have an iPhone and they want you to back it up. Add in an iPad. Okay, now you get a storage allotment for backups for iPad. And that can even be separate from just regular cloud storage. It's just your dedicated device backup storage. And if Apple doesn't want to do that, then don't put us in a position where they expect us to use cloud services for all of our data.
Yep. No, I can't agree with you more on that. For sure. For sure.
Jeff, what would you have them back? What would you have them backing up?
The data from your device, which could be separate from photos. You don't need backup applications because those reinstall anyhow. But if Apple's expecting us to use their cloud services for our data, give me enough for the backup storage space for whatever the average iPhone user is.
Yep.
Okay.
Great. Ben, I'm going to throw you in here before we wrap up here. What's your thoughts on this?
I mean, honestly, to basically use an iPhone, you have to pay Apple $3 a month minimum.
Right.
I agree.
Yeah. Right. With the importance they're starting to put on services, it wouldn't make sense from Apple's point of view to give that $3 back.
I get that.
I mean, I think in this new cloud interconnected world, the fact that you will probably have one, if not more, data plans from, iCloud, Google One, or OneDrive is just a reality of the modern world.
For us. Now, for when you get outside of our echo chamber, it's a different story. I'll use my parents as an example. I got a call one day from my dad, and he was very confused because he was getting these alerts on his iPhone that he needed more storage. And what it was iCloud or Apple had done the thing where it's like, hey, store your photos here. And it's not clear to the average user what that means. And so he immediately just filled up his iCloud storage. And I had set him up so that he was backing up as well. He didn't have enough storage. And so he was pushed into having to pay for something without understanding why he was having to pay for it, and not understanding what it actually meant to have that storage. For you and me, sure, we've got Dropbox and iCloud and Box and whatever else, and probably OneDrive, and we get how we can use all those things, but the average person doesn't get that.
That's right.
And is it Apple's responsibility to make sure people understand how to use it? I don't think so. However, when they vague people into having to pay for services, that's not cool.
So I want to play devil's advocate here for a second. Because, Jeff, I agree with that last statement. I like the way you said it, vague them into. Sometimes I think all the tech companies have their face a little too close to the picture, and they kind of forget that the normal people out there, because we certainly are not normal, are not really completely understanding what's going on. But, and I don't know this, so somebody correct me. Does Android or Samsung or any of those, do they give you an online backup option of any kind as part of you signing up for their service?
Looking at Google One, I think what they offer is fairly close to what Apple does. The only difference is
like 15 gigabytes.
Gmail has its own bucket, I think.
Right. So I guess where I was going with this is, if I buy an Android phone tomorrow, do I have an option to have anything backed up, documents, settings, anything at all, without purchasing a service from Dropbox, Box, whomever? I don't think so, but I'm not an Android user, so I would want to be corrected on that.
I'm not sure.
But if you look at it that way, Apple's ahead of the game. And Ben, if you're right, and my Google service comes with X number of gigs of storage, then it's in parity with Apple. But nobody's complaining about that. So is it a chance for Apple to be a little bit of a differentiator and add a little more value? Yeah, maybe. But until they have competition, they've chosen not to. Yep. And folks, if I'm wrong about that, please somebody let me know, because I would like to be properly informed.
Send us an email here. Feedback at
I need to read this whole Google article, but I'm seeing 15 gigs.
I thought 15 gigs covers Gmail and storage.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So this is related to Google Photos.
Right.
Oh, okay. So photos and video count towards your 15 gig of Google account cloud storage.
Right.
Okay. So that 15 gig is everything, including backups.
Correct.
Okay. And for Apple, that's 5 gig.
5 gigs. Yep. So
does mail count into Apple's 5 gigs?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it does.
Okay, then that discounts some of what I said, but it's also not integrated in necessarily as an automatic, easily turn onable. Is that a word? Service.
Turn onable. I love that.
I think I'll get a T-shirt with that. Turn onable.
Well,
you might get some dirty looks, Chuck.
I hope so.
It looks like for Google, 15 gig of clouds on their free cloud storage plan. They offer 3 other standard plans: 100, 200 gig, and 2 terabyte. And I'm reading this from someone else's article. And instead of actually just listing the prices, it says each plan costs less than $10 per month. So that's kind of lame. Just if you're going to take the time to write that, put the prices in. Holy crap, people.
All right.
Don't be lazy. I would have kicked that back to the writer and said, put the words in.
Do it. All right.
It implies you're paying the same price for the lower tiers as the higher tiers.
Yeah.
On that note, let's go ahead and wrap up for this week. That was a great conversation. I'm so glad we talked about the clouds. I knew that would be a good lively conversation. Thanks to everybody in the chat room at youtube.com/intouchwithis web. Thank you, as well as Cletus and others. And we appreciate you being here. So that's a wrap for this week. Please send your comments, questions, and suggestions to our email address, which is feedback@intouchwithios.com. You can follow us on Mastodon at intouchwithios at techhangout.social. Support the show by buying me a coffee at intouchwithios.com/coffee. We would really appreciate it. You can also become a patron of the show by going to patreon.com/intouchwithios. We have 2 tiers available to support the show. We really appreciate it. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe so you are notified when we are live streaming, which is usually Thursday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/intouchwithios, where you can watch the current and past live streams as well as the past shows. Visit In Touch with iOS magazine on Flipboard, where many of the topics we discuss are flipped into the magazine. The link is in our show notes. You can subscribe to the show in your favorite podcatcher, including Pocket Cast, Overcast, Apple Podcasts, and many others. But better yet, just go to our website at intouchwithios.com, where all the links to all the ways to listen to us are there. I am Dave Ginsburg, and you can find me on Mastodon at DaveG65 at Mastodon.cloud. Chuck Joyner, thank you so much for coming back on the show. We always love having you. Where can people find you?
Hey, thank you for having me, Dave. It's always a pleasure. I look forward to it.
Yes.
You can find me at macvoices.com. That's where we're talking to lots of interesting people. Something special is coming up next week, and that's all I'm going to say. So, but it's going to stretch out over the better part, if not the whole week. So be prepared. And on all the socials, you can find me as at Chuck Joyner. On the major socials, I'm also at MacVoices. Thanks again, Dave. It's always fun to be here.
Thank you. And Ben Roethig, thanks you for being here as well. Where can people find you?
Well, you can find me at Ben Roethig on social media, roethig.tech for my writings. On Tuesday nights, you can find me on that Chuck Joyner guy's Mac Voices show. On Thursday mornings, you can find me on The Big Show with Jeff Gamet. On Friday mornings, you can find me on The Mac Show with interim host Jeff Gamet. And of course, most every Thursday, you can find me here on In Touch with iOS with Mr. Dave Ginsburg.
Thanks, Ben. Appreciate it. And last but certainly not least, Jeff Gamet, thank you as always for being here. We really appreciate it. Where can people find you?
Thank you for letting me be part of this, because I genuinely have a lot of fun. Okay, where can people find me? Social medias. I'm Jay Gamet on basically everything. Mastodon and Instagram. That's where I'm posting most of my stuff. Then for shows, Chuck keeps letting me back on Mac Voices Live on Tuesdays. And Dave keeps letting me back on In Touch with iOS on Thursdays. Then on the British Tech Network, as been noted, I am your long-term interim host for The Big Show. And then again on Fridays for The Mac Show. And Brian Chaffin and I record The Context Machine.
Great. All right. Thank you, all of you. And thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed the show. We enjoyed doing it. And we'll talk again soon.